everyone. Let's go on with learning the economic development of China. In last lesson, we learned Chapter 1, the past and present of China's economic development. Today, we are going to learn Chapter 2, industry revitalization and reform experience. We've learned in last lesson that the national economy is usually divided into three sectors: primary industry, agriculture; secondary industry, manufacturing industry; and tertiary industry, service. Let's take a look at the changes in social life brought about by the revitalization of the three sectors. And then we'll talk about China's experience in reforming economy. The first part is revitalization of the three industries. Agriculture is fundamental to a country's economy. Food is the paramount necessity of the people. In the 1990s, the American economist Lester Brown questioned China's food security. In the 21st century, who could feed China? Western scholars at the time generally agreed that all the governments before had failed to solve the problem of feeding the Chinese. Neither could the government of People's Republic of China. And in the future, even the whole world's grain yield cannot meet the enormous grain needs of Chinese people. However, fact shows that China has succeeded in feeding 20% of the world's population with 9% of the world's arable land, and enabled 1.4 billion people to say goodbye to the history of hunger plague. China has not only solved its own food problems, but has also made an outstanding contribution to world food security. Rice is the staple food of over 65% of China's population. Agronomist Yuan Longping led a Chinese research team that successfully cultivated hybrid rice, opening up new avenues for significant increase in rice production. Yuan's book has been distributed to more than 40 countries and has become a guidebook for hybrid rice research and production worldwide. By the end of 2020, more than 7 million hectares of hybrid rice had been planted in over 40 countries. The research team has also helped countries such as Vietnam and Bangladesh to solve the problem of rice crop failure due to seawater intrusion. As a tax on peasants directly, agricultural tax has a history of over 2,600 years in China. For several decades after the founding of the People's Republic of China, agricultural tax was also an important source of national revenue. However, the excessive burden on peasants attracted the attention of the government. Central government decided to abolish the agricultural tax from the 1st of January 2006. The abolition of it has greatly reduced the burden on the peasants. Throughout the world, most countries have achieved development while causing damages to the natural environment, and China's economic development is no exception. In 2005, Xi Jinping proposed the concept of 绿水青山就是金山银山. Clear waters and green mountains are as good as mountains of gold and silver. Residents of Yu village in Zhejiang province entirely agrees to it. In the 1980s and 1990s, people of Yu village became rich by digging mines and building cement factories. But the destroyed environment has caused them a lot of headache. Between 2003 and 2005, the village shut down its mines and cement factories, began to close down the mountains to protect the environment. Since then, people of Yu village have been developing environmental-friendly industries. Today, there are clean roads and shady trees in Yu village. The polluted village has been transformed into a national scenic spot. Villagers' per capita net income has become about 6 times of that of before. Manufacturing industry is the leading sector of the economy, and the development of the manufacturing industry is a remarkable sign of a society's productivity. Through hard struggle, Chinese people have not only built their country into the world's #1 manufacturing power, but have also enabled global consumers to enjoy the most cost-effective industrial products. China produces over 50% of the world's steel and cement, 60% of home appliances, 70% of mobile phones and computers, and it is the only country in the world with all industrial sectors. According to the World Bank, China has been the world's largest manufacturing country for 11 years in a row since 2010. 5G, nuclear power, and high-speed rail are all leaders in their fields. According to statistics, in the 70 years since the founding of People's Republic of China, the per capita disposable income of residents has increased approximately 60 times in real terms. With the increase in income, people will gradually increase their spending in order to improve their quality of life and are willing to pay for services. Service sector is the important part of the modern industrial system and plays an increasingly important role in national economic and social development. Service sector in developed countries generally accounts for more than 70% of the economy. China, as a developing country, service sector accounts for more than 50% of the economy. Service sector includes many industries, and this section will focus on typical enterprises in the internet industry and the communications industry with a brief explanation of the cultural, tourism, and financial industries. In the early 20th century, it was hard to find Chinese companies in the world's top technology companies. But now, China has a number of world-class internet companies. 5 have entered the top 10 global internet companies in 2020. 阿里巴巴、腾讯、美团、拼多多和京东。Internet companies have not only met people's needs in shopping, education, healthcare, travel, entertainment, and socializing, but have also profoundly changed the habits and the consumption behavior of people. People can buy train and airplane tickets online, as well as any household goods. Take online food ordering, take away, 外卖, for example. According to statistics, 1 in 2 Chinese netizens order takeaway. The takeaway industry has expanded its service scenario from food and beverage to a variety of categories, such as supermarkets, green groceries, medicine, and flowers. Consumption period has expanded from dining time to the whole day. China is a global leader in mobile payments. Going out with just a smartphone is enough. Even if you go to a market in the countryside, the old grandpas and grannies have QR codes on their stores for mobile phones to scan and pay. The health code introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic is a big data application that has dramatically improved the efficiency and accuracy of the verification of people's information. China's communications industry has undergone a development journey from blank to going global. Looking back at the beginning of the People's Republic of China, the average Chinese people owned only half a telephone for every 1,000 people. Communications technology and equipment was 20 to 30 years behind that of developed countries. As the decades went by, people's means of long-distance communication developed from letter writing and telegrams to smartphones and the Internet. The Internet coverage proportion is 55.8%, exceeding the global average by 4.1 percentage, and the Asian average by 9.1%. Development of communications enterprises has gone through the process of self-reliance, joint ventures, and independent innovation. When it comes to the communications, we have to mention Huawei, the world's leading information and communications provider. Huawei, which provides information and communications products and services to 1/3 of the world's population in more than 170 countries, is ranked 49 on the Fortune 500 list of the world's largest companies in 2020, and first among the top 500 private companies in China. The name of Huawei comes from the dream of its founder Ren Zhengfei, who had to find a different career path in 1987 due to a setback in his career. In 1990, China's communications sector was in a dire state. Fixed-line telephones coverage was only 1.5% in 1990. At that time, in America, telephone coverage was over 90%. China's phone coverage in 1990 was even left behind that of America before World War II. One reason for the low telephone coverage is that multinational companies occupied China's market at that time. Lucent from America, Ericsson from Sweden, Siemens from Germany, Bell from Belgium, Nortel from Canada, Alcatel from France, NEC and Fujitsu from Japan all saw the huge potential of Chinese market. They charged high prices on their products and services. In addition, customers may need to wait up to 6 months for installation. Ren Zhengfei noticed all this. He realized that being in an era of peace and development does not mean developed countries and developing countries have fully resolved their differences and become partners in the globalized economy. Instead, it means a few large countries can use their advantages in capital, management, technology, and culture to launch a new round of colonial expansion on a global scale. This invasion is more deceptive and the methods are more sophisticated, which naturally makes it more difficult for developing countries seeking to rise. After 2011, Huawei has transformed itself into an IT full-service provider. In 2020, despite multiple adverse factors, Huawei's overall operations were robust and achieved global sales revenue of 891.4 billion RMB. In 2021, Huawei is ranked 44th in the Fortune 500 list, up from the 49th in 2020. In today's international communications industry, Huawei is acknowledged as a leading provider. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, after people are fed and clothed, they have spiritual pursuits. They want to listen to music and watch movies. Next, let's take a look at China's cultural industries. Cultural industries are business industries engaged in cultural products and services, including broadcasting, film, television, press, publishing, art, education, and training, etc. In 2012, CCTV produced a food documentary, 舌尖上的中国, A Bite of China, which became a national hit as soon as it began broadcasting. It is said that foreigners also love to watch this program. After watching it, they have questions about why Chinese people take so much trouble to eat a meal. There are many steps from selecting ingredients to processing them into a meal. It is important to understand that Chinese people do not just eat for the sake of eating. We are more interested in enjoying and experiencing the food culture. Chinese cinema has progressed a lot. The pace of development of China's total box office is rare in the history of the world. 2020 saw a number of cinemas announce their closure or shut down due to the pandemic at the beginning of the year. But the year in which the film industry was hit hard was also a record-breaking year for the Chinese box office. 12.95 billion RMB was accumulated in 2020, officially surpassing North America's results for the same period and making it the world's #1 box office market for the first time in history. Of course, taking the pandemic into account, this does not mean that the Chinese film industry has been massively strong and unbeatable. In fact, it was China's strong resistance to the pandemic that helped the film industry to recover first and rise to the top in glory. At the same time, construction of various film bases in China is also in full swing. With more than 100 film bases built across the country, such as the Hengdian Film and Television City in Hengdian City, Zhejiang Province, which has become the largest film and television shooting base in the world, and has been called Hollywood in China by Hollywood magazine. China now has the world's largest domestic tourism market. It's the world's #1 consumer of international tourism and the 4th largest tourist destination in the world. Now, tourism has become a form of mass leisure, indicating that travel has become a part of Chinese people's life, and China has entered the stage of mass tourism. China currently has 14 World Natural Heritage Sites and 4 dual natural and cultural heritage sites, all of which are ranked first in the world. These are pictures of some of the famous sites, including the Forbidden City in Beijing, the Terracotta Warriors, and the horses in Xi'an, West Lake in Hangzhou, and Yandang Mountain in Wenzhou. Hope you can come to visit these places of interest in the future. Finance is the heart and lifeblood of a country's economy. At present, China's banking sector has total assets ranking first in the world. For the third year in a row, Chinese banks took the top 4 spots in the 2020 Global Bank 1000 list, and the total number of Chinese banks on the list reached 143. This has also given impetus to China's steady financial opening. ICBC, China Construction Bank, Agricultural Bank of China, and Bank of China are all ranked in the top 50 on the 2021 Fortune 500 list of the world's largest companies. In terms of capital markets, China's capital market has become increasingly attractive to international capital. Experience in reforming economy. If you walk into any government office or administrative service center in China, you will see the words 为人民服务, serving the people, prominently displayed on the walls of the hall. The phrase serving the people is taken from a speech by Mao Zedong, the first president of the People's Republic of China. In November 2012, Xi Jinping, who had just been elected General Secretary of the CPC, said at a meeting with Chinese and foreign journalists, "The people's aspiration for a better life is our goal of struggle." Data shows that when total economic volume has increased significantly, income level and health status of Chinese people have been rising too. In the year 2000, China was among the lower middle-income countries, according to GNI per capita classified by the World Bank. In 2019, China has become one of the upper middle-income countries. Deng Xiaoping, chief architect of China's reform and opening up, once said, "The world is now an open world." One important reason why China lagging behind Western countries after the Industrial Revolution is it closed its doors and kept to itself, secluding the country from the outside world was one of the major causes of China's poverty, backwards, and the invasion of the Western powers in the modern era. Understanding these lessons from history, it is easy to understand why China today insists on opening up to the outside world as its basic national policy. China's accession to the World Trade Organization, WTO, which aims to achieve free trade, was the landmark move towards full openness. And in November 2001, it was formally approved to join the WTO. Will China continue to remain open in the future? President Xi Jinping has declared to the world, China's open door will not be closed. It will only be opened wider and wider. Finally, let's review the vocabulary learned in this lesson together. 民以食为天，粮食，粮食产量，大米，杂交大米，自然环境，绿水青山就是金山银山，生产力，高铁，发 发展中国家，通信业、旅游业、金融业、外卖、二维码、智能手机、健康码、大数据、合资企业、创新、跨国公司、票房、休闲、世界自然和文化遗产、资产、资本、联合国、政策、世界贸易组织。In the last lesson, we will learn the economic development of Wenzhou. See you in the next lesson.